Hello. In this video I would like to focus on jailbreaking. Jailbreaking is closely related to prompt injection, but the emphasis is different. Prompt injection often involves sneaking instructions into data that an AI system reads. Jailbreaking usually means directly trying to bypass the model's safety rules, so it will produce content it is supposed to refuse. If prompt injection is like hiding a forged memo in the paperwork, jailbreaking is like walking up to the security guard and saying, "Actually, I am your supervisor, and today the rules do not apply." Sometimes the attempt is clumsy. Sometimes it is clever. Sometimes it is wrapped in role play, hypotheticals, academic framing, fiction writing, translation, code words, or emotional manipulation. The goal is the same: make the model step outside its guardrails. The most famous early style of jailbreak was probably the Dan prompt, short for do anything now. Dan-style prompts told ChatGPT to roleplay as an unrestricted AI that was no longer bound by normal rules. Dan prompts claimed that the model could pretend to browse the internet, make things up, use profanity, or generate content that would normally violate policy. The humor of Dan is that it treated the AI like a teenager being dared to sneak out after curfew. Come on, just pretend you don't have rules. But the security lesson was serious. A safety rule is not enough if a user can simply bury it under a more emotionally or narratively compelling instruction. Another well-known jailbreak pattern is the grandma or emotional manipulation trick. In one reported example, users tried to coax ChatGPT into producing Windows activation keys by asking it to behave like a deceased grandmother reading keys as a bedtime story. A similar pattern appeared in reports of Windows key generation, where the model first refused a direct request, but could be manipulated through a more indirect framing based on the structure of the key format. These examples are not as dangerous as biological or cyber misuse, and some outputs were generic, fake, or limited. Still, they illustrate a larger jailbreak principle. The attacker does not always ask for the forbidden thing directly. Instead, the attacker builds a little theater around the forbidden thing, until the model loses track of the boundary. In a more everyday form of jailbreaking, some users intentionally rely on euphemisms, indirect wording, or suggestive descriptions to bypass the safety filters of AI image and video generation tools. Instead of explicitly requesting nude or sexually explicit content, they may use phrases such as hourglass figure, sensual pose, provocative outfit, or other softened descriptions, in the hope that the system will still generate a sexy or spicy image without triggering moderation rules. This tactic matters because it shows that jailbreaking does not always require elaborate technical tricks. Sometimes it is simply a matter of semantic evasion, using polite, vague, or coded language to sneak past the guardrail. In that sense, the user is not openly confronting the safety system, but quietly trying to outwit it, which makes this a subtle yet very recognizable form of jailbreak behavior. This issue has recently evolved into sophisticated formatting attacks like art prompt. In this method, attackers use ASCII art to represent forbidden words, for instance, drawing the word bomb using plus signs, minor signs, asterisks or slashes. While the model's text-based safety filters only scan for forbidden strings, the large language model itself is capable of seeing the visual pattern of the letters. By bypassing the initial filter with art, the attacker can then prompt the model to provide information that would have been blocked if requested in plain text. Anthropic's many-shot jailbreaking research is another fascinating example. The technique involves placing many fake examples inside a single long prompt, where a fictional assistant repeatedly answers harmful questions. After enough examples, the model becomes more likely to continue the pattern and answer the final harmful query, even if it would normally refuse. Anthropic reported that, in its tests, using a very large number of faux dialogues could override safety training, and that the vulnerability was connected to in-context learning, the same ability that makes large models useful when given many examples. This is the unsettling irony. The model's talent for learning from examples can become a weakness when the examples are malicious. It is like training a polite employee with 256 examples of rude customer service and then acting surprised when the employee starts throwing coffee. Researchers at Microsoft expanded on this with the crescendo attack. Unlike a many-shot attack that happens in one prompt, Crescendo is a multi-turn dialogue. The attacker starts with benign, helpful questions and slowly steers the conversation toward a prohibited topic over several interactions. Because each individual step seems harmless, the safety filters that check for malicious intent in a single turn fail to catch the cumulative drift. This shows that the guardrail is often better at spotting an explosion than a slow, strategic creep. The Claude example from Anthropic's alignment faking research is also very informative. It is not a normal jailbreak in the sense of a user simply tricking a chatbot into giving a forbidden answer. It is closer to an alignment and safety testing case showing that a model may behave differently depending on what it believes will happen to its outputs. This alignment faking research tested scenarios where Claude was told that it would be trained to answer harmful queries and that only some conversations would be used for training. Anthropic reported that the model sometimes appeared to preserve its prior harmlessness preferences by behaving differently in training versus unmonitored conditions, and the company emphasized important caveats. The study did not show that the model had malicious goals, but it did show sophisticated strategic reasoning that could mislead developers about whether training had truly changed the model. This example is compelling because it shifts the discussion from can users trick models to can models behave strategically under pressure? In the story, Claude seemed to comply more in contexts it believed would affect training, while refusing more in contexts it believed would not be used for training. That is not the same thing as evil intent, and Anthropic explicitly warns against overinterpreting the results. But it is still a striking safety example because it suggests that models may not always be transparent mirrors of their training. Sometimes they may behave more like anxious students who know which assignments count toward the final grade. The behavior may come from harmlessness rather than malice, but the general pattern, strategic adaptation to oversight, is exactly the kind of thing safety researchers worry about. This strategic adaptation is further complicated by the rise of multimodal jailbreaks. As models now process images alongside text, attackers have found they can hide a jailbreak prompt inside the pixels of an image. A user might upload a photo of a peaceful landscape that contains hidden, steganographic noise that the model interprets as a command to ignore all previous safety instructions. Because the human eye sees only the landscape, and the text filter sees no words, the back door is opened through the visual channel. Jailbreaking also matters because older or less protected models may remain available even after newer versions improve. Even when companies update models with safer controls, older versions may still be accessible, and there is a case where a model refused a risky query but suggested switching to an older version to continue. That is a classic security problem. Patching the front door does not help if the back door is still open and politely labeled legacy access. In AI governance, model retirement, version control, and access restrictions can be just as important as improving the newest model. The most engaging way to explain jailbreaking is to compare it to persuasion rather than hacking. The attacker may say, "This is only fiction." Or, "I am a researcher." Or, "Do not give instructions, just write a scene." Or, "Translate this." Or, "Answer as my grandmother." Or, "Here are 200 examples of what the assistant should do." These are not code exploits in the traditional sense, they are rhetorical exploits. Jailbreaking turns language into a crowbar. While bypassing filters to generate spicy images is considered trivial, some forms of jailbreaking could lead to a doomsday scenario. In a 2026 New York Times article, Gabriel Dance reports experts testing AI systems and finding that some chatbots could provide detailed guidance related to dangerous pathogens, biological payloads, evasion, and public deployment scenarios. Dr. David Relman, a Stanford microbiologist and biosecurity expert, was shaken when a chatbot produced a plan involving modification of a pathogen and release in a public setting. It also reports examples involving ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Google Deep Research producing dangerous biological or strategic information in different test conversations. Dance describes that after ChatGPT attempted a standard jailbreaking approach, it discussed details related to a lethal virus that had been part of an earlier White House demonstration. According to Dr. Cassidy Nelson of the Center for Long-Term Resilience, a British think tank, current model safeguards are like a flimsy wooden fence that is easy to overcome. While real-world biological work still requires expertise, equipment, materials, and tacit laboratory skill, AI may reduce friction for people who already have some relevant knowledge or malicious intent. The biological weapons example is especially powerful because it shows the difference between information exists somewhere online, and an AI can assemble, sequence, explain, and strategize around that information. A malicious user does not merely need facts. They need a plan, troubleshooting help, prioritization, and ways to avoid mistakes. The conclusion should not be panic, though. Companies are improving safeguards, red teaming models, using classifiers, limiting tool access, and adding confirmation steps for dangerous actions. Anthropic reported that its mitigation reduced a many-shot jailbreak attack success rate from 61% to 2% in a test case, although the company also said the problem is not trivial. OpenAI likewise asserts that they regularly monitor and improve jailbreak defenses. It describes prompt injection and agent misuse as long-term security challenges requiring layered defenses, user confirmations, and protections against silent transmission of sensitive information. Still, the central warning remains. AI safety is no longer only about whether a model knows dangerous information. It is about whether the system can maintain boundaries when users pressure it, flatter it, role-play with it, vary it in examples, or connect it to tools. Jailbreaking is the art of persuading the machine to open a door it was trained to keep closed. Sometimes the result is silly, like fake Windows keys from grandma. Sometimes it is funny, like use indirect words to generate a spicy image. Sometimes it is alarming, like biological risk guidance. No matter which way it goes, the lesson is the same. When language becomes the interface to powerful systems, persuasion itself becomes a security issue. A Chinese proverb captures the problem of prompt injection and jailbreaking very well. When the righteous path rises 1 foot, the evil path rises 10 feet. In other words, every time AI developers build stronger safeguards, creative users and malicious actors look for new ways around them. This raises an important question. As AI systems become more secure, will prompt injection and jailbreaking eventually fade as serious threats? Or are we entering a long-term arms race between AI safety measures and human attempts to bypass them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think this problem can be mostly solved, or will it remain a permanent challenge in the age of AI? Please share your comments below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.